Hey there guys, so in this video I'm going over the differences, pros and cons between overhead barbell press versus overhead dumbbell press. For me it really depends on what I'm trying to achieve. At the moment I'm leaning more towards doing the dumbbell overhead press, and that's simply because for me I've got more of a weakness in my internal and external obliques. I'm doing the one-handed variation because there's lateral flexion. It requires, the opposite side to brace and hold, really quite well. So, my lower back's been feeling a little bit weird of late. I know it's not like joint related, it's just soft tissue. So when I was doing the dumbbell one hand overhead press last night, I could feel my left hand side really fatiguing out on reps 7, 8, 9, and 10 versus, when I swap over to my left hand, my right side can hold position very well, and there was like no weakness within the core. So in terms of, lateral flexion and trying to strengthen certain, muscle groups, find the dumbbell one arm press is really good at hitting, internal and external obliques really hard. Obviously, it's going to work the rest of the core to an extent, but I don't feel it's anywhere near as much as I do in the obliques. Now, with the barbell overhead press, for me, I find my abs in terms of like rectus abdominis has to work really hard, and that's to help me, stay upright and not topple backwards under weight. And then my spinal erectors, they really have to engage. So it's more of an anterior posterior, sort of working relationship with those two versus the lateral flexion on the dumbbell one arm press. The other thing I like about, say, for instance, dumbbell one arm press is the ability to have freedom within the movement, and I can place my elbow either slightly more at 45 or kick it back to 65 degrees, whatever I want. Barbell, I don't have that luxury. However, barbell press overhead, I find it really works my mid and upper back very thoroughly. Also hits a bit of the lower back as well, but in a positive way, as long as my abs are switched on. Then with the dumbbell, one arm press, I feel it more in the shoulders and triceps, so more directly on the targeted muscles. But then again, when you're pressing a weight overhead, even though the main movers are, say, for instance, shoulders and triceps, if your upper back doesn't have the ability to hold position, and you're pressing from, a foundation that's quite weak and unstable, you're never really going to maximize your strength overhead. So, like in the competition block, I was going more with the barbell overhead press because I wanted to have a really strong upper back, because that sets a really good foundation for the bench press. It also carries across well to squats. Now I'm sort of more in the off season. I'm working more, I want to keep the delts still going and I want the triceps to grow a bit, but I need to work more on my core as well, because, that's lagging behind, and that's just simply due to the terrible comp prep and everything that happened during it. So, for me, this is a better exercise for the off season versus, when I'm in season competing in powerlifting. I prefer to generally stick with the barbell. Sometimes I'll put the barbell press on the Monday, and other times I'll put the dumbbell press on a Thursday. It really depends how I'm feeling as well. If I had, shoulder issues and my shoulders felt tight, and lacking mobility, I'm more likely to lean towards the dumbbell variation, simply because I have the ability to move the elbow where I need. Barbell, obviously your head's going to get in the way. You can't have a strict line of motion, but dumbbell, I can keep it pretty even most of the time. If I also wanted to get rid of a lot of the lean on a dumbbell movement, I would grab something like the upright of a power rack, or, a fixed piece of equipment. So, I can brace that way. I can grab onto it, and then I don't have to try and use my core to brace anywhere near as much. So it really comes down to what you're trying to achieve. And then the other thing a lot of people forget, after I've done my heavy overhead work, I'll go and do some of the lighter stuff like lateral raises and rear delt flies. Out of the two, lateral raises for me, I bring the dumbbells up sort of almost in line with the top of my ear, so I don't just stop at shoulder height. And I find for me, it hits the delts really well, but then I also get a lot of engagement from the upper traps, and, they have to stabilize my scapula a lot, and traps are going to go a very long way in terms of just improving stability overhead. The lateral raises hits obviously a little bit more of that side delts, helps cap things off, makes you look that fraction wider and more well-rounded, more like an athlete. And then, the rear delt flies, they're really functional in terms of just helping maintain good shoulder health, your ability to externally rotate. And they're just there to help hold, your shoulder health together as well. So it's just an exercise that, I put those two in. The workload for them, 4 sets, and I make the reps a lot on the higher side, generally 12 to 15 reps, and I'm trying to keep the break time down at around the 2-minute mark. Sometimes I'll do 3 sets and feel absolutely cooked, and, I only get 10 reps by set 3. And if that's the case, I just call it there. If I chase a pump for rear delt flies, I can really feel it in the back of the shoulder, and it almost feels uncomfortable, like something's being impinged because of the sheer amount of like blood flow, and everything's obviously just pumped and feeling quite restricted. And it's important to know the difference between, a pump in the area versus have I actually hurt something. Personally, and people that I've coached, I haven't come across anyone that's hurt their rear delts doing rear delt flies, but that's not to say that it can't happen. If you guys have any further questions, comment below and I'll do my best to get back to you. If you guys haven't already, hit like and subscribe, and have a great day wherever you are.